So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for PERG's EWI coffee break, How to Choose Your Lenses. I'm Allison Couples, and I am the PERG EWI coordinator. We have an outstanding group of panelists with us today, and we're really grateful to all of them for sharing their time and expertise. It's going to be a great discussion. I'm excited for it. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to Bianca of Otto Nemens, Bianca Halpern of Otto Nemens, I can say that, and Tema Steg for helping bring this all together. We definitely couldn't have done it without either of them. And thank you, of course, and as always, to our PERG sponsors without whom none of this would be available. Applied Entertainment and Sports, RE, NFP, Sony, and Taylor and Taylor. This is the first time PERG has had the opportunity to collaborate with women in media, and we're absolutely thrilled to be partnering on this conversation. For those of you who may not be familiar with PERG, the Production Equipment Rental Group, we are a trade association that represents the professional equipment rental companies, like Otto Nemens, for example. Um, and today's event is part of our Equitable Workforce Initiative, which is a program that I oversee. And the goal of EWI is to help diversify the workforce within rental companies and support talented professionals as they advance into leadership roles. And the program is sponsored by Netflix. So we're lucky to have brought together everyone on this panel. And one of the ways we support our the career development of our candidates is by creating opportunities for candidates to gain insight from conversations like this one. Before I hand it over to the panel, I'd love to have Tema say a few words on behalf of Women in Media.
Thank you very much. And thank you for including us in
Yay.
this awesome panel. So I am Tema Seg. I'm the executive director and founder of Women in Media. We promote gender balance in the film and entertainment industries through networking, professional development, and advocacy for filmmakers who work above and below the line. Our next event is our Networking and Writers Group Live, which will be on July 11th. Everybody is welcome to join us. We're going to have an incredible panel with Deborah Pratt, who's the creator of Quantum Leap, writer-producers of NCIS and Busy Tonight, and a producer who works um, for Barbie, right? Works for Mattel. And also a director writer who came from an editing background. So it's going to be a very full, rounded panel discussion about where the industry is going and what's important right now. There will be a panel breakfast. We're going to give away tools for people in grip and art department. And then we're going to do a table read with pro actors. We have folks who have been on Broadway and some improv folks. It's going to be phenomenal. So you can sit back, take notes, and then you'll get a little feedback on the projects as well. But if you want to be considered, you need to get a ticket before Friday and indicate that you want to submit your script. So, and it's also all in an effort to get more people into our writers groups. And there's a lot of interest in that and some that are already established. So if you don't have your ticket yet, go to our website, womenandmedia.com, go under events, and then get yourself a ticket by Friday if you're interested in having your project read. And if you're above and below the line, we are also going to have some networking, and you'll meet all kinds of people who can hopefully hire you, because that's really what we're about at Women in Media. Our hashtag is Hire These Women, but really it's gender diverse, right? So we want everybody to come, male, female, everything in between. You're all welcome. We got love for everybody. The other thing I want to say before I hand it back is that we have a number of Women in Media members on this panel. We are so thrilled. Bianca is an advisory board member. We're so grateful to her and her sustained, help for our organization and support. And we love PERG, just the nicest group of people. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And much love to our PERG people. Thank you.
Thanks, Tema. Well, I'm really happy.
Bianca.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here today with this group, of people, both women. Tony Fox, can you mute yourself, please? Um, really happy to be here with both groups, PERG and Women in Media. They're both groups that really help me feel connected throughout all these years. I come from being a cinematographer and then turning to entrepreneur, and then have been working in the rental house world for the last 8 years, coming from having my own house to now being at Autonemens, which is an amazing legacy rental house that has been around for 46 years. And we're here in Culver City. And we also have offices in Atlanta and opening in New York soon. I saw that there's some people from New York here, so I would love to see you there when we're opening in August. Um, and I'm really happy to have the panelists Sade, Sarah, and Jendra, all cinematographers that I get inspired by, that we work together. And Nancy Schreiber, who was also going to be here, she got a job, so we're happy for her. But she apologizes not being here. And so, yeah, I think let's get it started. We're going to talk about how to choose your lenses, right? There's so many lenses. I think one thing for sure is that now there are more lenses than ever. When I kind of stepped into the rental house world 8 years ago, 8, 9 years ago, I could say there was like a handful of lenses where people were mostly using, and now you pretty much have like five handfuls, right? There are new manufacturers, there are new flavors, there are so many options, right? So how do you go about choosing it? So we're gonna start by, I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit how you started. Jendra, are you ready? I see you got your spot. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jendra.
Hi, my name is Jendra Jarnigan. I went to NYU Film School in the early 90s, and I'll get more later into my lens journey in terms of like what I was exposed to in film school, and I was actually sort of a late comer to lenses, partly because I went the lighting route. So when I got out of film school, I needed to make a living and needed a while longer under my belt before I could get hired to make a living as a DP. So I worked as a gaffer and electrician for many years while I continued to shoot student films. And then I've shot a bunch of indie films, some episodic television. I love shooting music videos and trying to get back into commercials, sort of fell out from being in TV for a while, and a little bit of documentary as well. So do a little bit of everything, and I've always had like a right tool for the job kind of mindset, especially with cameras. Once we get into it, I do have sort of some favorite lenses, but I also ascribe to the right tool for the job approach for lenses as well, and therefore have over the last bunch of years been more interested in exploring new lenses and educating myself about the variety of lenses out there. Also, I do own a set of Cooke S4s, but I bought them in like I'd say 2007 or 2008 as a passive income investment, meaning I just parked them in a rental house and to get a paycheck every month. And about ready to let them go if anyone wants to buy a used set of S4s. Probably not. The used equipment market's taken the same downturn as our industry has, but I bought those. I could talk more later, but I didn't buy them to use them specifically for myself. I never really wanted to be in the business of renting gear directly, but just thought I didn't want to own a camera, but that it was a good idea to put some money into something and did some lenses instead.
They are really good lenses that are still loved, right? I don't know what year the S4s came out. Maybe Christiana, if you know by heart, please chime. But I think the S4s are, yeah, they're classic lenses that everyone still loves. Okay, thanks, Jendra. Sarah Whelden, tell us a little bit on how you started shooting and working on set.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me also. So nice to see so many familiar faces. I started in commercials. I had moved to Portland right after college, and um, it was right during the sort of like first major recession of my adult life in 2008. And Yeah, so it was just kind of like a weird time, and I needed to be doing something creative. And I had like touched on film in college, and it was like something I semi-focused on, but among other things. So it wasn't necessarily my primary thing. And I kind of got into commercial. I mean, I just realized like live in this capitalistic world and need to make money. And uh, I realized like doing something creative would be a good way to do that. The film industry seemed like the most accessible among like the skill sets I possessed. And so I got into commercials, and it was this very pragmatic thing. And then, you shoot commercials, and your little piece of your soul starts to disappear, and you need to feed it to keep it alive. So you shoot short films and whatever else on the side. And then that really started to like make me fall in love with this as an art form again. And so I kept doing that. And then in 2016, I was asked to shoot a feature, which I wasn't really looking to do. It wasn't really looking to be a narrative cinematographer at the time. It was just kind of like I had a thing going that was fine. And then I shot this feature, and uh, it was pretty like crazy intense, lots of things that went wrong that, as it goes. And I loved it. And I was like, well, if I love that, then that's saying something. So I started to like slowly pursue narrative more and more, until, eventually moving to LA and meeting Bianca, who has like been such a huge advocate for so many of us, including myself when I first landed in LA, who just kind of like uh, showed me the best of what the film industry can be. And yeah, and just since I got here, it's been, I mean, narrative at the forefront. So lots of indie features, still shooting shorts here and there as things are what they are. And yeah, and just I love exploring like all the weird parts of this craft, and working with directors and all the different people that we get to collaborate with. I think that's like for me what this is all about, is just like, surrounding myself with creative people and creating art together. And I think the film industry is very unique in that way. I think there, really is nothing else like it in terms of like not just the sort of like collaborative art form, but also like every job, every set has a slightly different makeup or a slightly different mission. And so we're always like working with new people, and working in different ways to sort of like find commonality together and sort of build these relationships. And I think like in this day and age, we all need more of that. And I think it's a really beautiful thing. So yeah, that's me.
Agreed. Thanks for the inspiration, Sarah. How about you, Sade?
Hey, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Sade. I'm a cinematographer based out here in LA. Graduated from Art Center Film School in Pasadena. So I've been here for a while, but similar to Jendra, I came up in the lighting department. And so a lot of what I learned about lenses was either on the job or through the rental house. Bianca has known me since the beginning of my career. always annoying her in the email inbox, asking if I could get my hands on a certain set of lenses and like just being able to build with the rental house has always been super supportive and like learning the language and learning the tech and staying up to date with the newest lenses as well. But a lot of my background is in commercials, similar to Sarah, where you get the resources and the budgets to use all the tools, but then now you like get the research in to use it on your own personal narrative projects and short form projects. And so a lot of my career has kind of been balancing the both, but also using lenses and lighting as a tool to create stories as well. And then I also organize with this nonprofit called Made in Her Image, where we facilitate film camps for young women of color to learn about filmmaking. Bianca has been a professor through our program. So always eager to just share the resources as I learn them, because I feel like in film school, it was a lot of me, peeking over shoulders. A lot of people already knew about the gear, already knew about the tech, and I came in fully blind. And so a lot of what I've learned on set and in practice has been in the work field and putting myself out there, but also a big part of my process is making those tools more accessible for the next generation as well.
Yes, thank you. I loved hearing a little bit of the stories because it reminds me on how we all need each other, how it's important to always speak up, never be afraid to ask, because the community we're here, right? And yes, I think for me, also filmmaking, one of the things that I most love is collaborating with different people, meeting places that you would never go if it wasn't for that film. And yeah, some really good stuff. Well, let's get into some more lens specific. Do you have a go-to lens, a specific go-to lens, or do you choose one for a different project? Anyone wants to start? We can go on the same order. Start, Jendra?
Yeah, I have a couple of different go-to lenses depending on the situation, but then I do like to think about different lenses depending on the story, especially for narrative film. Like if I in my commercial world, I shoot a lot of beauty and I shoot a lot of tabletop. So if I'm shooting products, then I want a very neutral lens that is very does not have any character, so to speak, and that is going to accurately portray that product without barrel distortion and flaring and halation and however I've come to learn my own personal taste in lenses. But we're not talking about clinical and product here. I like softer lenses and I like low contrast lenses. And then I have a lot of lens aberrations that I don't like. Like I hate certain kinds of flares. I like there's a certain kind of flare called eyelash flare, which is kind of a very specific kind of flare that I don't really like. I don't like lenses that flare rainbows. Basically things that I find distracting in the image. Like, sure, use them for fun in a music video kind of thing, but if I'm shooting story, I think the use of lens flare in story needs to be very specifically um, motivated. But I would say if I had to like shoot a project next week and I didn't have time to test anything new or like I would go, cook S4s R or S8s depending on, if it's Super 35 or full frame are like my sort of starting point of like something that I know very well and I know that I like it. I'd say my favorite looking lenses are Cook Speed Panchros, but they don't have the same degree of focal lengths. When I'm shooting them up against a window, like the veiling glare, the amount of light coming in that like washes everything out, that's really hard to correct out of the image, can be a deal breaker for me. So I don't go to those lenses as confidently under all circumstances as I would with the regular cooks, which Okay, as 4s, 7s, 8s, it's like very hard to make them flare, unless you want them to. But I really like the look of speed paint crows. So the Cook line is probably my biggest comfort zone. And then I have various, Panavision flavors that I come to understand that I like ultra speeds. And then I also have like different reasons for different things. Like I like uh Zeiss super speeds have my favorite looking flares. Like if I want flares, if I'm going for the flares, really just love the flare character, the shape and beauty, dimensionality of Zeiss super speed. So there's lots of different I think you can probably tell my answer, which is a little bit scattered, that there are so many different factors to lenses. And this isn't the question you asked yet, but I bet it's a question you'd be getting to, of sort of like what are the different characteristics of lenses that matter for which kinds of use cases, are definitely something that I'm thinking of. And I'm also very pragmatic. So I might like a set of lenses that are obscure, but that don't have enough focal lengths, or don't have if like I had an amazing experience using Crystal Express anamorphics on a movie, and they're complete pain in the butt for the ACs because they hadn't been rehoused, and every single one needed a different matte box, and every single one you basically had to like rebuild um, the camera build for it. They're all different lengths, they're all different diameters, and you have to be careful with them because they're old and they're touchy, and so like there's certain projects I just wouldn't even consider those for. And so I often will look at the range of focal lengths, close focus, um, the image characteristics of the lenses for sure, but sometimes I just narrow things down based on strictly practical reasons.
Yeah, and that's super important too, because if not, at the end of the day, what matters if you have like a beautiful image, but you don't make it through your day because you're taking too long between setups. So I think that's also something very important, right? That there's the right look, but at the end of the day, as a DP, you gotta finish the day, right? You gotta deliver. So I think this is very important to always talk to your AC about it, see if they have any concerns about the lenses you're using, and then go from there. How about you, Sarah? Any go-to on your list?
I mean, I think we all have like go-tos after we do this long enough because like we don't always have time to test ahead of a job or like bandwidth or all the things. So I think to some extent we all have like a little list of like of things that we kind of maybe grab for. I think my list is a little bit on the long side maybe, but like, I love the original Baltars so much. I also like the form factor is really great because some of them are tiny, tiny, which is so great in this day and age when like, we're often trying to like put something on a gimbal or, whatever we have to do, but also they just have such beautiful like warm color and everything else. I think the Zeiss super speeds have probably shot on more than anything else. Um, and sometimes that's just like, oh, I know it's the right I need something really fast and I know it's the right thing. And sometimes we test and the director's like, ooh, what is that? And it's like, yeah. Um, I love master primes for like if I'm going for like really, really clean, I think they just deliver a really beautiful quality that, even some of the newer lenses are almost like go take it a little bit too far for me. And I don't know, Master Primes just have uh, something about them that just doesn't quite enter the sort of like non-specific clinical world, which sometimes is the right thing. But I do love a Master Prime. And then like I shoot, on like the I have a Fujifilm GFX 102, which I'm just saying because Stosh is here. But no, but for that, I'll often I really like the Mamiya 645 lenses, and the which a lot of the rehouses actually like removed the full medium format ability, so you have to look out for that. But I sometimes I'll even just use like the sort of like um, not fully rehoused versions. And then Zeiss Jenna lenses are also like a lot of people don't realize that a lot of those Zeiss Jenna lenses will cover medium format as well. And when they do, there's so much interesting character. So if I'm shooting, I do like in commercial, I do a lot of like sports stuff and or sometimes it's like more naturey stuff and those lenses look really beautiful with sort of like organic matter in the frame because they uh provide a little bit of like that sort of like swirly look that we love, but it doesn't take it so far that it's like taking over the whole image. um and the Baltars do that a little bit too. Of course, like the speed paint, everybody loves speed panchros, and I'm like, I love them. And if I know who my colorist is and like how much time I'm gonna have to color, then they're such a great choice. And if I'm like, I don't know who's gonna color this or what that's gonna look like, then they can be tricky because they don't match at all from lens to lens. And like the 18 has this like often has this like weird purple vignetting, and so there's a lot of weird, funny things about them, but they really are gorgeous. And then like the new ones are actually quite I really actually like the new Pancros. I try to like think of them as their own thing, rather than like, oh, they're a replacement for the Speed Pancros, but they do, I think, deliver a good sort of balance between some of what we loved about the Pancros and like a more modern more approachable look. And the same is true for both like the old and new Verital zooms. I just shot a music video and we just rented like a 18 to 100, one of the old 18 to 100s, and it doesn't cover like any of the new sensors, but if you can just crop in a little bit, and it can be a really beautiful, fast approach if you're, especially if you're on a dolly. Yeah, and then like you know, there's so many amazing anamorphics, the Hoxie series. Atlas is doing so many like interesting things. I think like the Mercuries, I've shot a bunch of things on them, and like the coverage on them is really great. And 1.5 is kind of a nice squeeze for a lot of things. Like if you either are shooting on a camera with a standard sort of like more 16:9 sensor or 1.85 sensor, but also like if you're trying to deliver something at 1.85 but you're shooting on a 4.3 or 6.5 sensor. And then I don't know, I also love like the old Nikkor lenses. I That's like when I started working at this production company, we had uh, the like only lenses we owned when I first started working there were these old Nikkors that were like not rehoused. They just had like the like focus rings that you like zip tie on there. And the focus throw is like 10 degrees between like infinity and close focus. So they're impossible to pull focus on, but they're also just like, I don't know, they're so beautiful. And you can just, there's something freeing about just like these little stills lenses that you can just like grab a camera and go and like I don't know. It just all depends on the job. But I do love like for me it's like all that said, I really do take testing really seriously, and like if I'm shooting a narrative feature, like absolutely I'm gonna try to do a number of different tests. And I like to, go through, I always like walk out of the rental house and everyone's like, "So what do you think?" And I'm like, I have no idea. I need to like take these home and sit with them in a quiet dark room by myself and go through and look at them side by side. And I'll usually create like prepare a document and then some clips that I'll send over to a director. And if I'm feeling really spicy, I'll like make sure they can't see what the lenses are. Um, so that we're just, and I've had jobs where I've done done that testing and then the shoot gets pushed. So by the time I look at it, I've completely forgotten what I even tested. And so I'm just kind of like looking at these, and it's a really, I think like the more you can take yourself out, like, because, I just listed all these lenses I love, but like each job needs its own thing. And, especially the more you can test, like in the world of the film. So if you're shooting on tungsten, with tungsten lights, or if you're shooting with LED panels or whatever, it's always hard to get all the pieces you want. But the more you can, like, the closer you can get to like what your final image will be with a few lenses, like you'll be really surprised at all the different feelings that sort of like come up when you're looking through images. So yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. I think it's so important that point that where you touch on, like the speed panchro is not matching, so that might not be right for a job if you don't have a colorist. So there are a lot of vintage lenses out there, but they're not necessarily, some of them the glass is really old, so they're a different color. So that's what Sarah was mentioning, that they don't match is because the glass becomes so old that each focal length kind of has a different color essentially. So this could be a problem. But like Cook also did the new Panchro I Classic, which is the modern version of the Panchro. Not only the housing made for modern focus pulling, and I say modern because back in the day, focus pulling was made via manual follow focus on the lens, whereas now everyone uses wireless. So the motor that goes on the lens, that does a lot to the lens. So a lot of these old lenses, they were not made to have motors going from side to side, right? They were made for manual follow focus. So it's very different. The industry has changed a lot in the lenses. And I think the Pancro Classics, yes, you get the Pancro look, might not be exactly the same, but you get close to it, but in a modern housing, and all the focal lengths, they match the color, so that's good. I love to hear that you like the Mamiya. We just recently got them, Sarah, so the Mamiya 645 now available. How about you, Sade?
I also love those Mamiyas, so I'm happy y'all got them. I've been pulling, I have an AC who owns them actually, and he put me onto them, and I just fell in love with them. I've been using them on my past two like docu-style kind of jobs. But yeah, similar to y'all, I mean, yeah, I started off with Old Faithful Cook. Like I was all you already remember I'm sure you remember I was always pulling like the Pancros, the S4s, the S7s. I was so in love with the Cook look for just really the richness in skin tones. And I think the biggest thing I look at when I look at lenses is skin tones and texture as well. And so like I'm always trying to like find that naturalism, that softness, that rich warmth within my glass. But then over time, so similar to what you guys were saying, where it's like you're committing to a look for the whole project, and sometimes that can also put you in a hole as well. And so over time, I have leaned into like cleaner lens looks and stacked with filtration, or pulled out like a specialty lens that will give me that surreal look for a special sequence or scene. And so it's really just like mixing a bag of tricks when I pull my lens list. But even what you're talking about earlier with like the older lenses, like I remember I was on a short where we were shooting like all steady cam dance sequences, and I pulled these Cinevision anamorphics, and there was like I think there's a rehouse version now, but it was like the older model. So like the focus ring was popping off every so often from my focus puller, and they were like losing their mind trying to pull focus for these dance sequences. But I was so in love with the look and the feel of it that that's what made me commit to that lens look in the first place. But it's like trial and error. Like sometimes you don't realize those problems are going to pop up until you're on set. And so that also dictates how we select our lenses as well. How is it going to be? If I was on just like sticks or on dolly for the day, it probably would have worked out. But Steadicam tracking all day is definitely going to put you in a bind. And so definitely we fall in love with the look as image makers inevitably, but then we also have to take in the practicality as well of it all. But even now moving forward, like in my recent lens list, I've just been, like I said earlier, choosing like a cleaner look, but then having a specialty lens. Like one of my directors, Britt, is in the chat. I shot a short film with her where we pulled those Baltars for our hero look, but we had a few surreal montages where we pulled the blur tars, the deconizer lenses for some special sequences. And it just brings that excitement on set too, where it's like we give each other that look across the room, like, oh, whip out that blur tar for the special sequence. And it's just like it creates excitement on set and also those moments of like connection to what we're making. And so it's good to just have a bag of tricks. I would say like when I pull, at least for narrative specifically, like I'll have a hero look, but I always try to pull additional specialty lenses to help amplify certain moments or certain scenes as well. And then recently, I've been really fixated on full frame lenses. Those Mamiyas are everything, but also I've been pulling the Petzls a lot and the Auto Blads I just shot with that I fell in love with because of the tuning ring on the lens, and it allowed us to tune the lens per sequences, which made such a big difference on set because we were creating some kind of visual buildup with the story and the sequence. And even the Auto Blads, what I loved using about recently was we were shooting this jazz film where there are moments where our lead character has these moments of immersion. And so we hooked up the tuning lens on the auto bleds to a focus ring as well. And then we were like manually tuning it in between shots, which was really beautiful. And it helped us feel really focused into our main character. And so a lot of things with lenses, I'm just trying to find moments of connection to our characters and intention, really.
Yeah. The auto bloods are amazing. They're lenses
Yeah, I
that
love
Otto Nemens developed with PS technique, and they're rehoused Hasselblads that have a tuner in the back. So at tuning 0, they're regular Hasselblads, and then you tune from 0 to 6. So you start getting, the corner starts getting softer. I wish I was hooked up. Next time we're
Yeah,
gonna
next time that would be
use
good, actually.
camera with the Autoblad, and then I can show you because it's really amazing because you can do it in the lens, and that's
Exactly.
something that everyone likes.
And those are so major to test as well because you also have your limits. Like sometimes I didn't even want to go past a 5. So it's like important to kind of find like the min and max of where you want to live.
Yeah.
And also getting the director's intuition on it as well, because we might have sensibility, but the director might feel like that's too bold, too pushing it too.
Yes, yes, that definitely has happened where they, a commercial is like, oh, that's a bit too much, So you gotta testing always recommended. Sure, sometimes you don't have time, but I highly recommend testing and, every rental house, at least I can say for us, we're always open for testing. So don't hesitate to reach out to your people to do some tests. I know also some manufacturers are really open for testing. I know Christiana from Cook is here. Cook and Burbank, they're always open for testing. I know Zeiss also has a test place in Sherman Oaks. So don't ever hesitate to test because you can learn so much on those days. So, I mean, go choose. Yes, I love that each one of you kind of, have your own little niche that you love. But as far as characteristics, right? Like what's the most important characteristic for your body of work, right? For when you need. What do you look for as far as characteristic, Jendra?
I guess I've learned that I touched on it in my earlier answer that my taste consistently, so not just like project specific, but like my taste consistently leans towards low contrast
Yeah.
lenses or softer lenses. I also like using filters a lot. I've heard, like Panavision is known for customizing their lenses, and I've heard, people at Panavision say like why use filters when you can like build it into the lens? And it's like sure as a starting point, but I like to be able to use filters to temper the effect on a scene by scene or sequence situationally, as well as like, I might use stronger or weaker filters depending on like how much backlight I'm using, like the style of the lighting, et cetera, et cetera. So um I do like using filters, but that to say, um I mean I also as I've been learning about lenses, like there's different like astigmatism and spherical aberration and like these basic there are quantifiable things that you can learn about that like, oh, well, I like this look. That means you like this flaw. And then these are the kinds of lenses that either have those flaws, meaning, vintage lenses, or if you're having a set of lenses tuned or detuned to your taste and recipe, it's a way to be able to communicate what you do and do not like. But there's also, a misconception about sharpness and contrast. So you can, if you have a really contrasty lens, it appears more sharp, whereas the actual technical measure of sharpness has to do with resolution, which you can measure with charts and line pairs per millimeter and all that, deep dive nerdy stuff. But if you have a contrasty lens, then you get the appearance of sharpness, and that's something I know that I really do not prefer. Like, if I have a DIT, which most of the projects that I work on, I do not. The TV series that I've done, I have. Then I can play a little more with my LUTs or my corrections to work on the contrast on a scene by scene basis. But I like a starting point that is basically has like a elevated black or a softer black. Otherwise, I feel like really sharp lenses and or contrasty lenses are just harsh on faces, and that's not a look that I'm ever interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And it's really all about what you like, right? That's what's wonderful about cinematography. There's no right or wrong. That's what
I
you
want to add
what
to,
works.
I want to comment on specifically that because I mentioned about film school and my lens journey. When I went to film school, NYU had these like ingenue 12 to 120 Super 16 zooms, and we were just told in school that those lenses were terrible and that they sucked and that they were bad and that they were cheap, and the school just had a bunch of them because they were available and they were cheap. And we were encouraged, if you're shooting anything you're serious about, you want to get the good lenses, which were renting lenses, which meant at that time in the early 90s, Zeiss super speeds or standard speeds. So my first introduction to lenses was that there are good lenses and bad lenses. And there was no talk about why, or, I mean, we learned about aberrations and lens, you know, not characteristics in any sort of visual flavor way, but just in sort of like a technical what's going on that you should understand as part of your film school education way. But I started out thinking that there were good lenses and bad lenses. And come to find out, the characteristics of those ingenue 12 to 120 zooms is exactly the kind of thing that my taste prefers. Now that I've come full circle and come to know my taste. But back then I was just told these are bad and these are good. And so that was a very and I didn't know any better because I was, early on in my education, and that's what I was told. So I didn't really know to start exploring lenses, and that lenses had a vibe, a character, a feel that added anything at all to your story as like a creative choice. I thought it was just like a practical choice and what you couldn't afford the good ones versus you're stuck with the bad ones because that's all you could afford. So I kind of wish that it wasn't presented that way, but there were certainly way less lenses
Mhm.
available at
Yeah.
that time. And also we in that film school paradigm, we were only shooting Super 16. So it was like within Super 16, there's even less available lenses. So it wasn't like, okay, you're learning about shooting 35, or, it really wasn't until digital took over that people started to be more interested in the subtleties between lenses, as well as like what technically are flaws or drawbacks of lens design, that we started to see the beauty, or not see, but appreciate and seek out um, the beauty and the individualism of the various kinds of lenses. Because when everyone was shooting on a red camera, and if you're doing low budget stuff and you're not color grading it, everyone's material was looking the same. And so we were starting to look for ways to distinguish our imagery, and we're like, how about these older lenses that have these, because they had all been, sitting on shelves and sort of forgotten. Like there's this whole, peak in the supply and demand pricing of like K35s for a while, where it was like they were worth practically paperweights, and then they're like the most desirable lenses and they can't be made anymore. So like the price on the used market just like shot through the roof as people got, same with super speeds. Like for a while there were a dime a dozen and whatever, and then they were very desirable again. So it's interesting how tastes change in
Mhm.
the industry, but also with ourselves as individuals, that I'm wondering, because whenever I do panels, I'm always thinking about the audience, and how much are we uh, speaking in ways that the people can actually follow. And it's like, if I were in this lens panel audience, myself of 10 or 15 years ago, I would be lost. I don't know what the heck people are talking about, and I would feel overwhelmed and intimidated. And it's like, Sade brought up a lens in her discussion right now, the blur tars. I've never heard of them. So it's like, I just want to encourage people that there are so many kinds of lenses out there that you cannot know them all. You're not expected to. I have actually, I'm embarrassed to say, I've never shot Leica. And it's not because I don't like Leica, it's because I already have things that I know that I like, that I gravitate towards, that if I'm in a pinch, I go for that. Or if I'm going for something like quirky and out there, then I'm asking people for, more obscure lens. There's nothing wrong with Leica at all, but like people talk about the difference between, Summilux and Summicron. I don't even know what that means. So I just wanted to let people know, as we're sort of jumping all over the place and talking about different models of lenses and brands of lenses, and of course we're the panelists who were chosen because we know what we're talking about, to like not um, be intimidated, or if you feel like you can't follow, what everyone's talking about. Like you don't need to know all of
Mhm.
these things to be a good DP, to be a working DP, to be competent. So I just caught myself there wondering about that and putting myself in other people's shoes. So I wanted to flag that.
Thanks, Jendra. No, that's so important because there are way too many, and you're right. And thanks for, being so open about it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong about not knowing what the Leicas look like, because there's so many other options, right? And I think the craft is more, right? That's where it starts. Like, important is like, do you know how to tell a story? Do you know how to collaborate with director, right? And yes, there's the right lens for each shot, but everything needs to have a reason for you to be using, right? And it can be so overwhelming. Gosh, yes. Sarah, any characteristics you look for specifically on your lenses? Maybe vintage
Yeah.
sounds like a
No,
little from.
yeah, no, thank you, Jendra. I thought that was like really well said. And like, I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know. And there are so many lenses and I will never test them all. And even if I do, I still won't really know them. You don't know a lens until you've shot like many a film on it. Because even if you shoot one film, you're shooting one film in a certain way. and you've tested it and then you shoot it in a certain way and maybe it's a high key film and then you're like, I don't know how this performs if I'm underexposing or this or that. So there's so many different combinations. And then there's, the one thing I keep thinking about, and like Jendra started to sort of touch on this, speaking about like, her experience in the 90s, like where, lenses were lenses. And like even when I started in 2008, it was still like lenses were lenses and sharpest, best lens. And, I mean, I think there's like a optical perfection that one could theoretically achieve, but it may not make, a favorite lens. It might be like optically closer to, quote, perfection from a scientific standard. But a big component in choosing a lens, and this is a little bit of an aside on characteristics though, but I think it's important, is like, what are you shooting on? And the biggest distinction being like film versus digital. And if you're, of course, like shooting in either of those formats, like are you shooting Super 16 or shooting Super 35? Or are you shooting full frame IMAX, which I've never shot, but it's like these are all a big part of the conversation because one, there's certain lenses delineated for each format, and a lens that covers a bigger format can be theoretically adapted to fit on smaller formats. Um, but you'll start losing some of the edges, which might be a good thing. You might love the Jennas, for example. You might love the color and the texture of them, but like the edge distortion is way too much. But if you put them on like a smaller format, you're going to lose all that in a way that might be good and might be unfortunate. It just all depends. So I think like when I shoot film, which I don't shoot film terribly often, but when I do, I'm actually often more open to like a sharper, more sort of like sharper, the more higher contrast image than when I shoot digital. And I think part of it is that like digital is made up of, most digital cameras are made up of uh, red, blue, and then two green photo sites, which is what the sensor is made up of. And sort of like each pixel, in theory, is made up of one red, one blue, and two greens. And I find that like, because the digital camera is literally just like, capturing those in lines, when the lenses are a bit softer, I find they sort of like blend that color together a little bit more for me. Um, and working with color on film, like on celluloid on film, is very different from working with color on a digital sensor, and all the digital sensors are so different. Because, and as are film stocks, although there are not as many film stocks as there once was. But so that's a big distinction. But I do shoot mostly digital, and I think most work, and if you're going to work at a rental house, like you're probably going to be dealing largely, mostly, maybe entirely in digital, depending on the house. And you know, I do like Gendra, I do like lower contrast, a softer lens.
Mhm.
One thing I've thought about with regards to that too is that um I don't have perfect vision, and I am like, I have glasses that I wear when I drive at night, but I don't wear them all that often. So the world to me is a bit soft. And so when I see extremely sharp images, it's actually like a bit jarring to me because I'm like, that's not how the world looks. And I think like it is how it looks to somebody. It's not how it looks to me. So to me, and this is our like personalities as cinematographers. And then of course directors have their own feelings about these things. And a script may, like ask for a call for certain things that directly go against this. But I will say in general, because I'm not seeing the world with like that clarity, I tend to like my lenses to sort of soften things a little bit for me. Beyond that, it's like everything else, and even that, but everything else is very per project. sometimes like focus breathing, which is like where when you pull focus, the lens actually is like physically changing your focal length a little bit and zooming in and out based on, and some lenses correct really well for this where you can't see at all, and some lenses don't correct for it at all. And um, some project I was shooting this project and like the whole film was like, don't this was like a long time ago before well, like when I was still really learning a ton about lenses and didn't know a lot. And we tested a couple lenses and we really loved the like old Koa anamorphics, which are like have crazy focus breathing. But this whole project, like our whole like goal was to lock off the camera and have it like almost never move until it finally moves. And so we were actually on set, we suddenly were like, wow, every time we like pull focus, the whole world is shifting. So we actually just decided, let's just let the actor go in and out of focus because that's less jarring than the focus breathing. So sometimes that can be a big issue. And sometimes I'm like, like I'm moving the camera a lot and it's like something with a little more style and the focus is breathing and it feels like every move is a zolly where you're like dollying and zooming opposite each other. So it creates this weird, it's like the Hitchcock and Steven Spielberg has a famous one in Jaws. But um, so every project is different. And sometimes like the focus I kind of love. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. I like the way like the world is constantly shifting every time I move the lens. And sometimes I love that, but then I get to this one shot on the film and I'm like, ah, we're in this like locked off shot and it's so distracting to me. Um, so that's a big thing. I know also Jendra talked about filters and I feel the same. I really like having filters in my bag because I might have a lens that I need to do this, like I might want a little more like blooming out of my highlights or this or that, or I might just have a filter I drop in at the beginning of a film and never take it out of the matte box. And sometimes I like to change them based on the focal length. And the biggest downside with a filter, people will say, is that if you like zoom in and look at the bokeh, you can see the like filter shape in it. And is like for me, I'm like the only people who are doing that are DPs, and I don't make movies for DPs, so whatever. Um, if it's like helping my overall image in a way and it's giving me more control in camera, then great. So yeah, I mean, I guess that was a little bit like all over the place, but yeah, I mean, there's so many different characteristics, and I think the best thing to do again is to like test as much as you can and try to just like I this is how I typically approach it is I'll like test and then I'll look at my test with the director and we'll just go off like what feels right for the project. And
Mm-hmm.
then we'll kind of go from there and say, and I might say like, okay, you love that lens. And I love that you love that lens, but I do want to say that like with that lens is going to come this like crazy flare every time. And I know you specifically didn't want flare. So we can do that, but it's going to require us like being really controlled and specific about how and when we shoot. Or different things. So we might go through a lens test and say like, great, I have a sense for what you like. You like these flares and you like um this set when it's opened all the way up, and you like this set at 5.6 if we're changing our aperture at all throughout the show. And then I might go like bring that to a rental house and say, hey, so we tried out all these lenses and we really liked these and we liked this. And do you have anything else that like might be interesting to test? And even on that first test, like I always like to ask the rental house because they might be like, oh, we have this like weird, old Japanese lens set that we that like TLS rehoused and did this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, oh, let's try it. Or like the auto blods are a great example, which are like, you know, I think, the best example of like a custom tunable lens. I think they're the only ones that start at zero, truly, and can like increase from
Mhm.
there and increase really gradually. Um, but yeah, so a lot of different stuff there. But I think the best thing again is just like test, and then as you start to identify the things you like, then like pick up like Jay Holben's Cine Lens manual or something, or like do an internet search and see if like David Mullen has talked about these lenses in the past, because he probably has, and then start to like understand what are the characteristics that you like about those, and then you can maybe go to the rental house and say like, I liked the coma of these lenses, which is a word maybe you just learned, and then they might say like, oh, these lenses have similar coma, why don't you try these sets as well, and then you can narrow it down.
Thanks, Sarah. I love that people are also chatting. I know some people were kind of almost out of time. We're gonna hear from Sade. I love that there's some conversation on the chat. So please, everyone, take a look there. People are sharing places where you can learn about lenses and see lens tests. I love that. Your turn, Sade. What are we thinking about
Um,
characteristics?
I think Jendra and Sarah kind of already said it. I feel like there's so many gems in what you guys just went over. But just to add to the conversation, I would say a big thing I look at when I'm testing lenses is them in different lighting scenarios as well. Like, for example, if I like to test like daytime exteriors as well, because if I'm shooting like a handheld tracking shot and the flares are so sensitive that it's messing up the whole look and feel of the shot, I might not lean into those lenses. That'll dictate my decisions. Or I'll test like if I'm doing like a moodier candlelit lighting scenario where I might underexpose a little bit, how forgiving is the lens going to be in that scenario? That's usually a big influence on how I choose a lens. And then also, um, I said this earlier, but skin tones as well is like a major thing for me where there aren't many resources of lens tests on black and brown skin tones. So a lot of what I'm learning is through my own personal testing and research or through other DPs who have tested the lenses and we like share resources among us. So I've been like trying to build a collection of lens tests on black and brown skin tones. Like I did a whole field day at Panavision. I have some stuff from Otto, from B-Cine back in the day. Just curating more of a database for us because it is different based on your subject matter as well and how it looks and feels as well. And then Olin Collardy, he's a DP from the UK. He has some great lens tests on his personal website, Vimeo. Like a lot of DPs upload their lens tests online, and that's usually how I learn about new glass as well, because it is important to just, even if it's not your own personal sensibility or taste, to know what these lenses are other lenses are capable of. Like I was on a film recently where I had to go like I don't usually pull Leica, but I needed like a grittier, sharper, slightly greenish tint to of a look for this like underground experiment scene. And so you never know where the project could take you, where you might go against what your normal or natural sensibilities are, and the story is taking you in a different direction. So just kind of staying up to speed on the different lenses is always super helpful for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, there's
Cool.
so much information in books, online, and also trade shows. There's a very unique lens summit that happens in Portland every 2 years. And that's a really cool event to go because it's a trade show focused only in lenses, but then you have also Cinegear in LA that has not only lenses but cameras, but a lot of lens manufacturers are there. And also, manufacturers that have offices, they're always open to receive you, and as well as the rental house. We're running out of time, but I wanted to thank everyone for being here. Our panelists, Jendra, Sade, Sarah. I always love chatting with you. I always learn something. I always get inspired, and it always makes me remember why I do what I do. And we're here at Autonemen. So if you need anything, my email is bianca@autonemens.com. And I'm a proud council member of PERG and advisory board of Women in Media. And thank you, Tama, again for partnership for this panel. I love women in media. We have been going through some hard times this year with a lot of the fundings being cut by the government. So anyone, if you have any means or ideas, the organization does need funding in order to be able to continue doing what they do best. And yeah, thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you, everybody.